hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Thank you, Billy. One of my favorites. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. And I've shared this with many of you. I want to share it to all of you as a group. I want to thank you for being my friend. And I want to thank you for bringing, those of you who had an opportunity to bring friends. If you brought a friend with you, we're glad you came. And if you came here because you wanted to be among friends, you're in the right place. So happy Friendship Sunday. And today we're going to celebrate the whole awareness and the consciousness and honoring of the energy of friendship. It is absolutely one of the most beautiful experiences to have and be surrounded with those who are not always necessarily of like mind, but there is a connection that we have with people on a level that really helps us to really get that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. And it helps us to stretch into those possibilities of what is possible for us. One of my favorite stories about friendship was a guy who decided he wanted to make new friends, and so in order to make new friends, he decided to take up inline skating. And so he took up inline skating, and he said it provides thrills and cardiovascular conditioning and muscle tone, and it also introduced him to all kinds of new friends, including the ambulance driver, the emergency room technician, the physical therapist, as well as those neighbors down the block, those sweet neighbors that called the ambulance to get him. It was really, so it was a great opportunity to meet people. Not necessarily the best way to do it, but it's, everybody has their own techniques, right? Isn't that true? And I love this cute little story. Cartoon, Billy says to Dolly, big toes don't like flip-flops because it separates them from their friends. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. And then one of my favorite philosophers and teachers, deep spiritual teacher actually, Groucho Marx, he said, outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Of course, inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. Oh, Lord. Yes, I do get a little corny at times. My wife reminds me, but I like to have fun with it. I want to share with you a quote that came to me this week that really speaks to me on a lot of levels, and I hope it will speak to you also. This is from Mark Twain. He says, "Keep away from people who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that, but the really great make you feel that you too can become great. When you are seeking to bring big plans to fruition, it's important with whom you regularly associate. Surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are also designing purpose-filled lives." To me, I think in many ways, that's what our friends do for us. Sometimes they do that not necessarily consciously or intentionally, but they help bring out something from within us. Sometimes they do that because they push our buttons, but sometimes they push buttons that oftentimes need to be pushed so that we know that we got buttons. Isn't that true? And so it's valuable for us to surround ourselves, not necessarily with people that are always simply there to that match everything that we think and believe. Sometimes there's a value. Charles, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. Can we do something with that? Is that a little bit? That's a little better. Thank you, Charles. Appreciate it. Our wonderful sound man. Let's give an applaud for our wonderful sound man. Yay, Charles. Without friends like that, we all have too much feedback, don't we? It's ba-dum-bum. One of the things that Oliver Wendell Holmes says is, don't flatter yourself, however, that friends authorize you to say disagreeable things to your intimates. The nearer you come into relationship with a person, the more necessary does tact and courtesy become. Except in cases of necessity, which are rare, leave your friends to learn unpleasant things from their enemies. They're already enough to tell them. So oftentimes we don't necessarily have to do that as friends. Oftentimes we are able to just simply be there with a person while they're in the midst of whatever it is that they're dealing with and going through. And even when their buttons get pushed, that we're actually there to recognize that they're going to get through that and hold that energy for them and hold that consciousness for them. Well, and one of the things that I titled this lesson, The Art and the Science of Friendship. And friendship really is an art, and it's something that we begin to develop when we are growing up, and sometimes it's a challenge for different ones of us at different times. I want to share with you that I know that you may find this hard to believe, but when I was 15 years old, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any friends. Well, at least that's what I thought as a 15-year-old. As a 15-year-old, I really felt like nobody liked me, nobody loved me. I'm going to go out in the garden and eat worms. You know that one? Yeah, I was feeling pretty sad and pretty down on myself and not feeling very loved. And I was having some challenges at school, and there were people at school that I was having some difficulty with, and I just made the assumption because I had difficulty with these people that nobody liked me, and everybody hated me, and I was pretty depressed about all that. And I'm blessed, however, in that I had a father who was also a friend. And my father gave me an amazing book that really changed my life. Many of you are familiar with this book, and it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. When I was 15 years old. And as I was reading that book, I began to look at myself. Imagine that. It wasn't always them. And, it was a little hard for a 15-year-old to get that it wasn't them. But it wasn't them. And as I began to recognize that one of the things that is taught in How to Win Friends and Influence People is the most valuable thing to be able to develop friendship is to learn how to be a friend. And it occurred to me that I really didn't know how to be a friend. I kept waiting for everybody else to be my friend. And the more I waited for everybody else to be my friend, the more I got everybody else waiting for me to be their friend. You follow? See, one of the things that we talk about in Unity, we understand is that there's this law of attraction, and the kind of energy that you put out there is the kind of energy that you draw. So because I kept feeling like I didn't have any friends and I kept waiting for someone else to come and be my friend, those around me were doing the same thing. And I attracted people who were trying to get me to be their friend, and it wasn't really working very well because I wanted them to be my friend. You follow me? So as I began to look at and listen to what was being taught there, and that was that the most valuable thing you can do, in fact, I have this great quote. Let me see if I can find this one here. It's, came across it. I'll have to paraphrase because I'm not finding it, but basically you will draw more friends to you in 2 months than you will by being interested in other people than you will in a whole lifetime of trying to get other people interested in you. Let me say that again because it's a valuable energy and a valuable awareness. You will make more friends by being interested in other people in 2 months than you will in a whole lifetime of trying to get other people interested in you. I was spending a lot of time and energy trying to get other people interested in me. I was finding all kinds of ways of showing off and acting out, and at the same time, I was also trying to be very shy and very, demurring at times, None of that worked really well, And it wasn't until I really began to ask people questions about themselves and really truly listen and pay attention that I found that people were very interested in me. And they began occasionally to do the same thing. They would ask me about myself, and I would share different things. But it wasn't until I got this understanding that truly beginning to be a friend to someone else was the real secret to having friends in my life. And one of the things that I said is that I just decided to title this The Art and Science of Friendship, because there is a scientific awareness that you and I are happier, are healthier, and it's been shown over and over again that people live longer based upon their level of friendships. Not just the number necessarily, but oftentimes the level and the characteristics and the quality of those friendships. Sometimes it's numbers also. Sometimes, there's an interesting little research study that I found, that came across, that this is by Sean Cummings, and the science of friendship, fundamental concepts of friendship. And there's some fundamental ideas and awarenesses that they've come across in terms of the research they were doing. First of all, it's valuable to recognize that friendship is not a static concept, but it's an ever-changing, crucial part of human experience across time and culture. It's a reciprocal form of connection and interaction. And it goes on to say, optimal friend relationships have 4 important elements: high levels of hope for oneself and the relationship itself. High levels of hope for oneself and the relationship and the relationship itself. So there's kind of a positive energy and a positive expectation when you have a friend and when you're in a friendship. There's something that lifts us into an assumption and a knowing that there's something that is better and that we're moving in that direction, either in our own particular lives and our friends are actually helping us to move in that way, or even in the relationship itself, that there's something that is building and growing and developing in that connection that we have with another person. And the connection that we have with another person is one of the things that enhances our ability to move into our own possibilities. It helps support us in that movement and that action. Second thing they talk about is high levels of trust with others. Friendship really is involving trust, isn't it? You have to have a certain level of trust to really experience that energy and that feeling of connection with another person. And at the same time, you have to practice that connection in order to develop that trust. So it's a kind of a mutually supporting experience. And so we learn to trust others more as we are willing to be open to connecting. And we deepen our connection as we begin to expand our willingness and our ability to trust. And then the third one is high levels of self-disclosure. And that has to do with also the trusting also. We're willing and able to be who we truly are. We're really able to and willing to, in our friendships, to really begin to share parts of ourselves with others that we maybe wouldn't share with everybody in the world. And with a sense and a knowing that sharing is going to be honored and that we're still going to be able to remain friends in those kind of places where our shadow comes out. One of the things that we learn and talk about in Unity is the reality is that we're whole beings and there are parts of our aspects that, there are parts of me I don't like very much. And I don't like them when they come out. And I kind of get embarrassed and ashamed and afraid. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that the more I can really accept that about myself, then those things don't really have that power over me. But the more I try to hide from it and say that I'm somehow, well, everybody knows I'm this spiritual being, that therefore I'm perfect, right? I love the laughter. Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the things this community knows about me is that I'm a human being and I share my lessons with them, and that my lessons are pretty funny sometimes, and they can be scary sometimes, for me at least. And yet, interestingly enough, this wonderful spiritual community lets me be human. And one of the things that I learned years ago is that when I start, when I have someone that starts trying to put me up on a pedestal, I know I'm going to get knocked off pretty quick, so that's okay. I mean, that's part of the learning and growing experience as a minister and as a teacher. So, part of our ability to really just simply be authentic with another person is another quality and characteristic of our friendships. And then there's a high levels of satisfaction in the relationship. This is someone that you connect with and you feel just good about that. And it doesn't necessarily always mean that you are going to necessarily be with each other all the time. Someone I consider one of my best and dearest friends over the years is a friend of mine that lives in Arizona, and we may not speak for months at times, but when we do speak, it's like we talked to each other yesterday. Sure, there are things that have gone on, and we share and we catch up with each other, but we just both know that the time, the distance, and all the things that have gone on don't necessarily change who we are and change our friendship. We know that we have different views on different things. We see things sometimes differently, but we know that there's a connection that we have and an honor and a respect that we have for each other and that we can appreciate with each other. And sometimes we're able to bring out those wonderful things that we both have. He sees things in me that I oftentimes am not able to see in myself, and vice versa. I see things in him that I know he sometimes does not see in himself. That kind of brings out the whole idea, the understanding that you and I are in relationships with others because they are there to show to us aspects of our nature and aspects of our being that we sometimes have challenges seeing and knowing for ourselves. How many are familiar with that? You've heard me talk about, perhaps, those of you who've been here before, but how many are familiar with this idea of the Johari window? Can I see a few of you? Yeah. So the Johari window is a fascinating tool for self-awareness. And the Johari window helps us to see that there are parts of ourselves. If you think about a square and a cross in the middle of it, you've got 4 quadrants up here. And there's a part of us in one quadrant. This quadrant in one corner, this is the part of us that everybody knows and we know about ourselves. It's the quadrant of awareness, you might say, that we are aware of ourselves and we're aware, and other people are aware of those aspects of ourselves. And then there's a quadrant over here where there are things about us that we're aware of that nobody else is aware of, right? And then there's a quadrant down here that we may not realize, and that is a part of us that everybody is aware of and we don't have a clue about. And then there's another wonderful quadrant where nobody knows. It's just completely unconscious. And nobody sees it and nobody knows about it, but it's there. There's something there. And that's part of the mystery also of our unfolding, isn't it? But oftentimes, in order to get over to this part where that nobody knows, we have to be willing to go to the part where everybody knows and we haven't got a clue. And be willing to listen to what other people are able to see in us and experience from us. And it doesn't necessarily mean that their perceptions are always the truth, but they may give us clues into something that is completely unknown to us and give us some insight and some awareness about what our possibilities are. Well, one of the things in the study, and they quote a number of different studies, and that is that our health, our well-being, our material benefits, and our strong are really oftentimes dependent on our connections and our friendships. The field of neurobiology is demonstrating that human friendships are vital to health and well-being. Our brains and nervous systems repair themselves via interactions with others. Our Many of our functions increase, and oftentimes our depressive symptoms decrease by simply being with and connecting in a social network. There was a Duke University study that discovered that isolated individuals, unmarried and or no friend network, were up to 3 times more likely to die of coronary artery disease within 5 years. So isolating ourselves is probably one of the most unhealthy things that we can do. And making these connections and developing these kinds of relationships and friends is one of the most healthy things that we can do for ourselves. And the beautiful thing about it is when we do that, we're not only doing it for ourselves, just recognize that you're actually doing that for your friends as well. And that's one of the gifts that we have to give. No matter if you're female or male, having friends is a positive thing in your life, and people with a wide network of friends have less tension, they've suffered less stress, they're stronger in defenses, they've lived longer, they're able to endure experiences and challenges more effectively. Our word for today was strength. And one of the things that's valuable for us to recognize is our true strength comes from within our own nature. But one of the things that allows that strength to come forward is being with those who help us to recognize and see that, and to also help be with us in those times when we need that strength and we need it to come forward. If I were to give anyone in this room a pencil, is there anyone in this room that thinks that they could not take a pencil and break it in half? So if I were to give you 2 pencils and you put them together, how many of you think you could break 2 pencils in half? Yeah, most of you could. Yeah. If I were to give you 3 pencils and you put those together, how many of you think you could break 3 pencils in half? If I were to give you 5 pencils and you put them all together, how many of you think you could break 5 pencils? I mean, seriously, let me see. You think you could break 5 pencils? Yeah. You and I are kind of like that. When we really are together with each other, we lend each other our strengths. We give each other that support and that security. And that's part of what coming together in this spiritual community is about, but it's also what friendships are for. And it helps us to really endure and to be stronger in life and to deal with these things in a stronger way. Came across this wonderful little quote from Bits and Pieces. Friendship is like a bank account. You can't continue to draw on it without making deposits. So it's important for us to continue to make deposits in our friendships, to lend positive energy to those in our lives that we honor and appreciate and that are there for us at different times, but also allow us to be there for them. So this is an interesting little thing that I came across from Jan Yeager, The Power of Friendship and How It Shapes Our Lives. Friendships that last either have less conflict than those that end or involve friends who know how to effectively handle conflict. Unfortunately, conflict, which often involves temporary stress in the short term, but less stress in the long term, is too often avoided at all costs. The cost may turn out to be the friendship. One way to deal with any problem in your friendship is to confront your friend eye to eye and say, we have conflict. Let's deal with it. I don't want anything to hurt our friendship because you and our friendship are very important to me. Do what the communication experts suggest you do. A technique I use when I work as a group facilitator, validate him or her and by acknowledging your friend's point of view or position. In other words, one of the most valuable things we can do for our friends is not to agree with them, but to validate their point of view. Can you see the difference in that? Agreeing with someone says, yes, I agree with your point of view and I see it that way. But validating their point of view is simply saying, oh, I see you have a different perception of that. I can honor that perception. So for example, if I were to ask one of you to describe this book to me, would you be willing, someone describe this book? What are you seeing here?
Rectangular, kind of an orangey yellow.
Yeah. Great. Are there words on it? Yeah. Can you read any of the words?
No.
You can't? Well, why can't you? It's obvious. I mean, the words are very clear. Why can't you read those words? It's ridiculous that you can't read those words. The words are they're right in, they're just big letters. It's all about perception, isn't it? It's all about perspective. It all is all about positionality is another term that we use. Whatever your position is, you're going to see the world differently depending upon where you're standing. And that's standing not only physically, but that's standing in terms of our own experiences in living and our own experiences in life. And we learn more about ourselves and about the world, not by simply thinking and believing that our position has the right answer or the right view, but recognizing that we have people in our lives to show us the other side of the book, to see that there are really other possibilities in life. There are people in this world that I feel a very good friendship with and I'm really connected with in many ways that actually vote very differently than I do. Can you believe that? And yet I really honor and respect them because they have things within their lives that they see things from a perspective that allows me to understand the possibilities, that there's a greater understanding that I can look into. Now, I may not necessarily agree with them or vote the same way, but I'm not going to necessarily shut them out of my life because they have a different perception, a different way of seeing things. Our world is so much bigger than that, and our possibility of friendships are so much bigger than that. This author goes on to say, I work as a group facilitator, and the idea is to validate their awareness, their position and their perception. You can agree to disagree and let your friend know you value their friendship, which should help the stakes in working things out rather than just cutting the friendship off. And so one of the most valuable things you can do in terms of a friendship is allowing people to have their understanding and their perceptions. Now, you may not agree with them, and you may ask them to listen and pay attention to what your position might be or your view, and they may be open to seeing and hearing that, and they may not. But you can still be in a connection and a relationship with them on a deeper level in a different way. And you can perhaps other things that you do see eye to eye, and other ways you do have the same perceptions. And so don't let different opportunities or experiences where they have a different position determine your friendship. Does that make sense? I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln. The best way to destroy your enemy is to make him a friend. The best way to destroy your enemy is to make him a friend. So one of the things I came across a great quote from Wayne Dyer, a real friend never gets in your way unless you happen to be on the way down. That's the kind of friends that you want. I came across this other great quote, two ladies sitting at a counter talking, and it says, true friendship isn't about being inseparable, it's being separated and nothing changes. That's kind of what I was talking about with my friend earlier. So when you think about your friends, one of the things I invite you to do is to recognize that when you are in a friendship with someone, you are in a connection and a relationship that is always going to be something that is going to lift you in some way. Now, it may lift you in some way because you are choosing to make a decision about that. Does that make sense? Because you're choosing to learn whatever experience or lesson that you need to learn from that other person's position or point of view. And it's choosing to learn something about yourself and how you may be responding or reacting to something going on in a particular friendship. I love this story from, it was actually written in the New York Yeah, New Angels Times. Henry Ford was a very outspoken liberal. And I said Henry Ford, I meant Henry Fonda. Excuse me, thank you. I had a quote from Henry Ford that I had earlier, but Henry Fonda, an outspoken liberal, and Jimmy Stewart was a stalwart conservative. And they were friends, and they remained friends over the years, and they remained very close and very tight friends. And they attribute their ability to transcend these differences from an experience that they had many years earlier. Jimmy Stewart recalls, we were rooming together in New York City, and one night we went out, and there was something political going on, and we got into an argument about it. Then we got into a fight, and before he knew it, we were swinging at each other. And thank God it was snowing, because I went down on my face more times than he did. And when we got back to the hotel, Henry said, listen, if you'll go along with this, I will. From this minute on, I want us never to mention anything to do with politics again. And we never did. And we've remained friends to this day. So, and this was actually before they made all those amazing movies together, which I thought was pretty phenomenal. So we can have different views, different opinions, and still honor and respect each other and have a deep friendship with people who have very different views from us, and that's important for us to recognize. But one of the things that's valuable for us to recognize also, I love Ashley Brilliant. You guys have heard me quote Ashley Brilliant. He does these wonderful things called pot shots. He says, all my friends and associates are exceptional people. How else could they cope with me? They have to be, obviously. So one of the things I wanted to do was also just take a moment and acknowledge any of you who brought friends with you here today. I want to thank you for bringing your friends. And those of you who are here because someone asked you to be here, part of what we wanted to do today was just honor you and thank you for being here today. If you've been here as a friend. How many of you here actually came to this, came here because of a friend? Awesome, awesome. How many of you came into Unity because of a friend? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. How many of you discovered a part of yourself, or a spiritual part of yourself in some way because of a friend? Yeah. So you can see the value of our friends in our spiritual life and our spiritual journey. And sometimes that is because we have things we need to see about ourselves, and then sometimes it's because they're there to hold us up and to give us a whole nother level of our possibilities and good. Oprah Winfrey said, you know, lots of people want to ride with you in the limo, but what you want is someone who will take the bus with you when the limo breaks down. So this week, take some time to think about the friends that you have in your life. Those of you in your life, those that have been in your life as friends, and you know, if you have some that have been estranged at different times in different ways, I'd encourage you to take some time to see if there's a way to reach out, see if there's a way to reconnect. Let yourself be in a place of openness to finding out more about who and what they are. Be curious about them. Find out what's going on for them. Find out what really is really at the heart of who and what they are. Learn how to be curious about those in your life and ask deeper questions and be open to experiencing the reality of who and what they are. And one of the things you'll find is that as you begin to be open to that possibility and doing that, one of the things you'll find is that the universe will actually draw to you people who really are just fascinated by you and want to know you more and really want to connect with you on a deeper level. It's a beautiful universe that we have and a beautiful opportunity to grow in ways that we probably wouldn't if we just surrounded ourselves with those who are always in our immediate circle. So be willing to take the time to look beyond the boundaries that we set up for ourselves. I found the quote that I was looking for earlier. It actually was from Dale Carnegie. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming really interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you, which is just another way of saying that the way to make a friend is to be one. So, again, I thank all of you for being my friend. I want to close with this wonderful poem by Mary Carolyn Davies. I love this one. This is friendship. I love you not only for what you are, but for what I am when I am with you. I love you not only for what you have made of me, made of yourself, but for what you are making of me. I love you for the part of me that you bring out. I love you for putting your hand in my heaped up heart and passing over all the frivolous and weak things that you cannot help seeing there, and drawing out into the light all the beautiful, radiant things that no one has looked quite far enough to find. I love you for ignoring the possibility of the fool in me, for laying firm hold of the possibility of good in me. I love you for closing your eye to the discords in me and adding to the music in me by worshipful listening. Spend some time this week in that worshipful listening and being open to the greater gifts that your friends are and that you are in their lives as well. God bless you and thank you. Namaste. In this place of quiet and stillness, we open our hearts, our minds to the friend. We know that ultimately the divine is one and is our best friend. We're open for knowing of that spirit within us as our friend. And we give thanks knowing that the friend draws to us all of those in this world who can reflect her, him in our lives, both as encouragement, acceptance, appreciation, and as challenges, opportunities for growth, experiences for greater possibilities of good. Thank you, blessed friend. And we know that that friend is also in us as our true nature. And we're open to being that friend, not only to others, but also to ourselves. Being open to loving, accepting, appreciating, honoring ourselves, and open to seeing and challenging limiting thoughts and beliefs, fears, doubts, anything that would hold us back from the greater possibilities of good that Spirit has in store for us. Let your heart be filled with the love of that friendship, of the divine, as our blessed friend, and the one that shares and shows us the connections we have, not only out in the world, but in spirit and in truth. Thank you. Thank you, Blessed Spirit. Thank you, friend. Take a nice deep breath. Feel the opening of the heart in that friendship. And give thanks. Take another nice deep breath. Let your awareness be in this room, this time, this place. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Be present here and now. And so it is.